Welcome to Wellthy Living Podcast. I'm Lisa, your host and founder of Wellthy Living. It is here that I connect with a variety of wonderful humans to have inspiring and insightful conversations to help you live a meaningful, connected and well life. A place to learn and grow in confidence and clarity and make choices that support your well-being, both personally and professionally. So we claim, so many people claim that that their goal is to thrive, yet the majority of us are living in a way that most days we are just barely surviving. Now, there's a really fundamental difference between thriving and surviving. And today I have a really special guest with me, Shannon Bush, who's made it her life's work to help people to thrive by bringing effortless success to their life and their business. So welcome, Shannon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Lisa.
Pleasure. So
cool to get to chat.
Yeah, I know, it's so exciting. And, Shannon's someone, before I tell you all about Shannon and I just spent a week together at an incredible retreat for women, the Ultimate Girls Week away in Fiji. Mm-hmm. And Shannon was the keynote speaker there, and she shared so much about some similar stuff that we're going to share today. So I'll go into telling you a little bit about Shannon, and then we'll get right into it. So Shannon is an international speaker. She's a retreat leader, an artist, a traveller, and a lover of deep and meaningful philosophical conversations about what matters most to you. So combining 25 years of coaching, mentoring, educating, and consulting, along with childhood spent in keen observation of family business machinations, giving her a unique perspective and empathy for small business owners. At the core, her own small business, Creative Possibility, provides innovative business coaching and strategy to her clients to learn new skills, identify challenges, gain clarity and confidence to create success. She's a big picture life and business liberator with a specific gift of honing in on small details, which is obviously the best mix. With her groundbreaking conception of the Thrive Factor, an archetypal profiling framework for women, she affords her clients a tangible insight into their own mindset around money, marketing, self-promotion, and standing out from the crowd. Despite being an Amazon best-selling author a couple of times over, she's most proud of her January 2019 publication, The Thrive Factor, and the transformational permission-giving dynamo it is. So in 2019, Shannon launched the Thrive Factor School and its foundational certification program, teaching women in business how to expertly profile their clients using the Thrive Factor framework and principles. So much. Yeah, but so much, and there's so much in here which really does help a lot of people to thrive. And you've done so much work through your business in so many years, and obviously your personality and the way that you are in the world that really helps other women not just survive, but really get the most out of themselves, their business, their life, both personally and professionally.
That's my mission.
Yeah, so it's such a good mission, and you and I are so aligned in the way that what we want for a lot of people, which we just do in slightly different modalities. And I'm not clear on the framework, but I love that you've got this framework. And for me, so much of my work and the core message is knowing yourself, that real key of self-knowledge, because I really believe that we really can't say thrive or have success in all areas of our life without really knowing ourselves.
Oh, completely, Lisa. And the one of the core messages that runs through the world, irrelevant of where we're based, where what our cultural background is, where we are in the world, our age, our gender, even though the work I do with the Thrive Factor is it is for women. But the question or the message running through is that who am I? And what am I here to do? What's my potential? And this is a lot of what my whole questioning for myself, but also from a tiny little girl. I've been in, what's the phrase that is in my bio, like keen observation. And but I just love observing people. And it's with a desire to better understand myself, but also how humans interact and how we can be better versions of ourselves and let go of the things, collective things of all sorts of different ways that they show up that stop us from thriving and whatever our definition of thriving is.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, I love that human behavior, and, there's nothing better than probably sitting at a bus stop or a train station and just people
Watching people play out life. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So just then you said, depending what your definition of thriving is. So what is your definition of thriving?
Oh, well, my definition of thriving is an evolving definition, because as I learn more about myself and the way I interact with the world, I come to better understand, therefore, who I am, and can get clearer on what thriving means to me. And it's everything from the day by day things to, having a roof over my head, like the practical things that we can sometimes take for granted. Having a roof over my head, having fresh, like being able to live in a country that has fresh water, those sorts of things, through to the fact that every day I get up and I get to choose what I do with my day. Even down to if I've got a crazy busy day with back-to-back clients, that's a choice I made to do that sort of work and have those people in my life, to going, you know what, okay, it's a Friday afternoon and I've had a busy week, and I'm going to chunk out a time in my diary, and I'm going to have that afternoon off, and I'm going to nap, or I'm going to go and do a float, or I'm going to pick my nieces and nephew up from school, or spend time with my mum. So it all comes down to, for me, thriving is about the choices I make. And remembering that too when I'm in the space of not maybe feeling so thriving because I've overextended, I've done too much, I'm tired, and go, okay, remember, I can reset this, and what is thriving mean to me? And it means having energy and vitality, feeling a degree of happiness, but also always remembering that I have choice, and that, I'm here for a big mission. One of my archetypes, definitely draws to that, because I have the visionary creator archetype in my profile, which is the big picture, global type vision for something. For me, was now the thrive factor.
Yeah, amazing. And I think that's true, that idea of we really do have that ability to create the life that we want. And I know that some people are more privileged than others, and therefore might have more choices, but we still all have some choice of the life
completely. And over the years here, prior to me being more focused with business and then working with women through the Thrive Factor, my background includes counselling and therapy qualifications. So I've had some really key times where I've been involved in business or working relationships, supporting therapeutic relationships, supporting clients who have been in the worst possible scenarios. And not just in Australia where you and I are based, but in other parts of the world too. And, I'm certainly aware of the privilege that I have, in those situations of people like, but I'm stuck here, I have no choice. And for me, it's about recognizing that we might not have a choice by the actual circumstances of where we live or how we live or our economic situation, but we have a choice about how we respond to that and what we do with what we have. And that's really the message there. It's not about saying that you can just miraculously change things and go, I've got choice and everything's going to be lovely and you're going to thrive, because that is not a reality for some people. But you can learn to be able to make the most of what you have and choose how you respond to your circumstances. And that's where the choice is key.
Yeah, and I think that also then comes down to that idea that thriving is self-knowledge. So really knowing your circumstance, knowing what makes you tick, what brings you alive, your strengths, your vulnerabilities, your support systems. And there's so many areas in your life which can actually contribute to your thriving. And if you look at, where are you currently at the moment, and really get to know yourself and really get to know, even like you said, your responses or whether you react to situations, like how you approach situations, it allows for the ability to, once you've got those core foundational understandings, to really then be able to make choices that would contribute to you thriving rather than just surviving.
Most definitely. And, for women, that's where the Thrive Factor as an archetypal framework comes in as such an important key way. It's a tool or a mechanism, a framework that we can use to better understand ourselves, to be profiled and to really then know or learn what your archetypes are. And of the 12 in the framework, as you may remember with hearing some of what I shared in Fiji, that our individual profile is 3, 4 or 5 archetypes, depends on the archetypes you have as to how many you end up having. But even then, I like the fact that it's not okay, the top 3 and that's all you are. It's like got some flexibility because we are all unique. But within that, every individual archetype has its own core strengths, and it has what I refer to as potential challenges.
Yeah.
Now, the word potential is very specific there because if we look at an archetype in isolation, yes, you could experience those challenges. Doesn't mean they're going to be negative or have a bad impact on you, but there could be something that could frustrate you, annoy you, and feel challenging. It's often the things that we refer to as the not so good stuff, but it doesn't have to be that way. It might just be the actual learning we need to have. But when we look at that, at your archetypes, then with the impact or the influence of other archetypes that you have in your profile, those challenges may not be real for you, but they also might be exacerbated and be even on a larger scale. So there's a science behind all of this, and it's all grounded in psychology. But I love that though, because the feedback I get when I profile women or when I'm working in programs and we do work around the archetypes as part of that, is that there's a lot of the word permission comes back. I feel like I have permission to be me, or I understand now why I do that, why I think that, why I feel that. And I know that I'm not broken, or there's not something wrong with me, or I don't need fixing. It's part of who I am. And I also know I've got all these strengths that I can use to help me if there's a negative impact of a challenge. Yeah? So again, with that confidence, then our ability to be clearer on how we make choices and how we respond to what's happening in our lives, professional, personal, otherwise, changes completely.
Yeah.
That's where the thriving comes in.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear if you can share a little bit about, and I know that we're not obviously got time to go in detail about all the different 12 archetypes, but maybe if you can just give us a quick rundown of some of them, and then we can maybe explore 1 or 2 of them.
All right. Well, let me, what I'm going to do is you haven't officially been profiled, but having observed you working, and doing things in Fiji for a week and getting to know you online and then in person, there's a couple that stand out as possible in your profile. So you're not going to get your whole profile done, but this is one of my gifts as a visionary creator, is that, and also, I created this framework. I've been using it for 10 years. I can see by people's behavior, by the words they use, the way they interact, the feelings and thoughts they talk about, that your archetypes, we wear them. We play out 2 type in our life all the time. So let me talk about a couple of your archetypes, and then we'll see how this goes. This is a nice thing. It's like simulating a profiling session. And as I often say to women when I'm coming to do a profiling session with them now, it's like I'm introducing you to you. And they're like, oh, okay. And they're like, oh, like I did one yesterday with a beautiful young woman that I've only just got to know through business recently. And, she had 5 archetypes, and we went through them. She's like, there's I can't believe they're all so spot on me. And all the things you talked about, the strengths that I have, that a lot that I'd forgotten, and the way things work and the interactions of the archetypes. She's like, I can't believe how accurate this is. Yeah. So let's put Lisa, we'll put Lisa in the hot seat now. So it's like thinking about of the archetypes that I'm pretty sure you've got, which ones am I going to share with you? I think we'll start with the networker connector. Yeah, so this is the archetype. It's not as common as we might think, but we tend to all know a networker connector because that's the girlfriend we have who literally knows everybody. And if she doesn't know them, she'll know how to meet them. Yeah, she loves people. She thrives in a big social setting. So this is often referred to the networker connector as a social butterfly. You walk into a room, you'll scan the room, you'll go, who's here that I know? Who can I meet? Who don't I know? But who am I going to make a beeline to meet? And who can I introduce to who? So that's where the connected thing comes in, really key. So they're great people to have when you have a function. If you are doing an event, you get your networker connectors on board because they'll invite all their friends. So if you're worried about not having enough people to come to your event, or whether it's online or in person, if you're in business, or even just a general social event, and you want more people at your party, invite the networker connector. She'll come with a crowd. It's a renter crowd. Yeah, so she, as I said, she's incredible at being able to make connections with others. There's a real magic and a real buzz and energy that you get from introducing someone to someone else. And it comes as a very intuitive thing. It's like you just know that person needs to know that person, or that community needs to know that community, or whatever the dynamic is. Yeah. Network connectors, though, are pretty terrible at actually making the most of the community that they've built. Yeah, they don't put their hand up and ask for something for themselves. Am I right? Yeah. They often feel very guilty about it. Good. They feel guilty about it. often, or they feel really awkward about asking someone. Like, you know, if I come to you and I go, Lisa, I need to meet this person, you're going to go, yeah, no worries, let me make that happen. And if you go, well, you know what, I need to have a conversation with that person about something for me, you'll go right down to the bottom of the list. It's like, oh, no, I want you to do Shannon before I ever do that for myself. So the networking connector's greatest lesson and therefore gift to herself is to learn to actually speak up, get clear on what she wants and needs, speak up and ask for it, and expect that it will be returned. Yeah, because it highly likely will be returned to you in whatever it is that you've asked for, but be really clear and specific about it, because you have probably given that individual that you would really like something from, or to do a collab with, or whatever the notion is, but you've probably given them a lot of introductions that have been really useful, really quality. So they're going to go, of course, what can I do for you? Yeah. So you need to remember to do that.
Yes, noted. Thank you.
Yes, noted. So rather than just going out and building a beautiful big community that's all really engaged and they love you, but they're all there for, you know, what they can get from you, it's being really clear about what you can also benefit from. It's not taking, it's not a guilt thing. It shouldn't be oh, this is awkward, or, you know, who am I to ask for something for myself? You deserve to be part of that reward of that networking community that you've created. Yeah. The other thing as well, that network connectors, they're so good at connecting everyone else, they can also often find themselves in spaces where they're disconnected from themselves because they're so about everyone else. So, you know, the social butterfly, the extrovert. So just being clear and to make sure that you are self-connecting and staying connected to what you want and need as well.
The last few years have definitely thought about that.
Yeah. So that's like high level introduction to a networking connector. You're allowed to say no to social events. Remember that. You don't have to go to everything.
Yes.
So, and again, depends on the combination of your other archetypes as to how that actually plays out. But as an individual archetype, a networking connector is the first one who's going to say yes to any social event and opportunity to go out. So I had dinner with a couple of friends last Friday night, and one of them is a networking connector. And I said to her, so have you been home this week? And she goes, oh, no, I've been out every night. So, you know, between social events, she volunteers at a school for something. She's, you know, it's a business event. She literally, this is Friday, and she'd been out every night during the week. So, yeah, which can then create obviously potential challenges at home if you've got a family and you've got other commitments. So, you know, being aware of that, and staying home is not boring. Staying home is actually a good thing to reset.
These days.
Yeah. Again, it depends on the other archetypes you've got. So that's your networking connector. Yeah. And I said, not as common an archetype, but we all tend to know one because it's the person we go to because of who they know. Yep. You know, there's always that one friend we have that knows everybody, or seemingly knows everyone, or if they don't know them, they know someone who knows them. Like you know, that 6 degrees of separation is about 2 in a networking connectors world. Yeah. Yep. So that's a fun archetype and a very useful one. It's good to have networking connectors in your world for sure. Let me think about what other one am I going to share with you. I think the mentor teacher is stood out as a possibility for you, and this is a relatively common archetype in women that are in business and in sort of corporate type career. And a mentor teacher loves to learn. Like, it's like, what can we learn? And when we love to share. So we need to be teaching in whatever capacity, a formal capacity, an informal capacity. We're natural mentors. I say we because this is one of my archetypes. You know, we can't, it's almost like we can't learn enough. We've got such a thirst for knowledge. And it's not just about formal learning that we can get in a tertiary course or a workshop or anything like that. It's also about observation. And you and I had a chat before about observing people, but it's about the observation and the life lessons that we have available to us. Those are equally important to us, and then we love to share them. And it is really important for mentor teachers to make sure that we are sharing what we're learning and not bottling all the information up and just learning more and more and more and more and more. When we get to a place where we are keeping all the information in, there can be a degree potentially of ego or arrogance that can kick in, a bit like you become the smarty pants who knows a bit too much. We know a lot anyway. Mentor teachers tend to know more than the average person. And again, people are drawn to us. So the magnetism for a mentor teacher is because people know that we know things. And like the network connector, you know people, or you know how to connect to them. Mentor teachers, we know things, we know information, we have knowledge, we have wisdom. And if we don't know, we will go and find out because we want to know. We want the answer to things. Yeah, so we research things, we read a lot, we listen a lot, we learn a lot, we go to every workshop. Now, one of the challenges that potentially can cause an issue for a mentor teacher is that this whole thirst and love for learning is that we are constantly learning and we don't actually implement. We don't actually do anything with the information that we are taking on board. Yeah. So mentor teachers, particularly if they're in a space from a mindset perspective where they've had an experience where they have second guessed how much they know, they might get to a point where they're like, oh, I've got to go and do that course. Or if someone's challenged them and gone, you shouldn't know that, because they've been sharing from their innate wisdom rather than a qualification that they have. They're like, oh, I must get a piece of paper to prove I know that. So they go off and do another thing and another thing and another thing, and never necessarily stop and fully either complete them or implement them so they actually are of use. Mentor teachers can often also find themselves sitting in say, a classroom environment, an informal or formal one, and they're sitting there going, I already know this, or I've done this course before and I forgot that I signed up for it, or, whatever it is. And then they're like, oh, I'm bored now, move on. And again, so they don't finish things, they don't implement things. So it's about really knowing and trusting your wisdom, and putting a pause button on when your natural instinct is to go, yes, I'm coming to whatever that thing is, or yes, I'm going to read that, or yes, I'm going to listen to that, is actually to pause and go, do I already have this information?
Yeah.
Do I already have this knowledge? Do I already have this wisdom? And if you do, then let it go. You don't have to go to every course. Now, with your networking connector mentor teacher, you're going to want to go because of the connections and the people that are there, and also the learning. Yeah, so actual real life learning is going to be more enticing to you than somebody who doesn't have the networking connector, for example. So going in person where you can actually see real people and connect with real people is going to be more enticing to you than someone who's like, no, I'm just happy to learn online. Yeah. Or self-paced learning where I don't have to interact with people. Yeah. So that's how that can influence both positively, because you're like, okay, I have to go to the in-person one, or it could be negative where it's like, I'm so tired because I've been to so many things this last week. So for you, networking events, if you've got the mentor teacher, you're going to want them to have some sort of an opportunity to learn something, not just interact with people. Yeah.
Yes.
So there you go. That's two of your potential archetypes.
Yeah. And I think that I've probably created, when I think about it, I've created so many events, like connection events, which have a learning element to them. And I've created them myself. So I have the control element.
Yes.
And therefore it creates the connection and the networking and the situation, but I also get to share and and also bring other people on to share as well. So it's like that connector as well. But and teacher. So that definitely resonate with quite a few of those, and I'm sure the listeners today, whoever's listening as well, would resonate possibly with part of it, or know someone that does. So
that's it. And if they know you, then they'll probably go, yeah, that's so Lisa. Yeah, definitely. That's two of 12. There's 12 archetypes in the framework, and as I said, when you do profiling and you find out what your archetypes actually are, you'll discover that you're 3, 4, or 5 archetypes. The one that influences you being 5 archetypes is an archetype called the shapeshifter alchemist. And this one that is the chameleon. So
I think
hence why
that one, when you were going through them, I think I've got actually a bit of that.
Yeah, possible. So the shapeshifter alchemist is the chameleon. She has this real, in fact, not the most common in the archetypes in terms of the not knowing who she is, but along with the pioneer seeker is a bit of a, I don't know who I am and I got to go and find who I am. But what happens differently with the shapeshifter alchemist is that she's chops and changes and blends, and she needs variety, and she's very adaptable, so she can often feel like she's literally moving and changing. I've literally had conversations with shapeshifter alchemists like this where we're recording a video and you can watch their faces completely change depending on like what role or what part or what thing they're stepping into to do. Can be that strong. A lot of shapeshifter alchemists have a real desire to sort of stand out and blend in at the same time. So it's a real dichotomy that plays around. So it's almost like the women that we see in our generation that are walking around with the dyed hair, probably a shapeshifter alchemist, like the brightly coloured dyed hair. But you talk to them, they're like, oh, but I'm just trying to blend in and hide and be inconspicuous. And yet they've got this like rainbow coloured hair. So there's a real challenge with that. The shapeshifter alchemists said, they can often spend a large part of their life not knowing who they are and sort of feel like they're chopping and changing. And I call it wafting around, doing all sorts of different things. From a professional or business perspective, they often have multiple careers or, do that their offerings in their business might be so many different things that are so diverse that their ideal audience is a bit like, but I don't know what she really does and what she's really good at. And like one week you're promoting this and next week you're promoting that. And like the audience, your ideal potential clients are sitting there going, I think she's great and I want to do such and such, but last week she was promoting this and now I don't know what, you know. Or when a shapeshifter alchemist gets overwhelmed with the enormity of her potential often, or the uncertainty of who she is, or feels like someone's challenged who she is and her identity, she can become invisible and we can literally lose her. And I know through observation during the week that we were together in Fiji, and we had 30 or so facilitators, and then we had 150 or 60 women there. To me it was obvious the shapeshifters, because I lost people at different times. So I was like, goodness me, like where have they gone? Like they were there and then they were not. Like they're just almost like blend into the background, which is not so good, you know, in business and professional life when you're actually trying to put yourself out there and promote, when you then suddenly vanish. Yeah, so being careful about that. But the alchemist is really a key part of this archetype, the shapeshifter alchemist being her name. And once a shapeshifter alchemist can really get clear on who she is and ground that, she has the ability to turn the alchemist on in a really true alchemical way. And an alchemist was someone that was perceived as being able to turn something of little or no value into incredible value and wealth. So it's the manifester. And I always say to shapeshifter alchemists, be very considered with what they're thinking, saying, feeling, and doing, because those thoughts, feelings, words, and actions become reality like that. The good stuff and the not so good stuff. A lot of shapeshifter alchemists, unfortunately, have had an experience where they're like, yeah, everything I think, or, you know, they'll say they have their mindset, so their self-talk will be terrible or for whatever reason. And of course, then the shitty stuff happens for them. They have a really crappy version of something happen in their life or their work or their business. And they think that that's all that life is. And they can't see how they can turn that around. And with consideration, with, you know, setting goals, doing mindset work, doing meditation, working with people that can help them to get clear and support them, you know, doing some accountability and support, they can actually turn that alchemist on and bring all the amazing things into life just like that. Yeah. So the one archetype that other women that don't have it tend to envy, because they only see the potential positives in the alchemist. They don't see the negatives that a lot of shapeshifter alchemists perceive that they've experienced. So
it's all so interesting. I mean, it must have taken you so long to come up with all of these different. I mean, the fact is,
yes and no. It was in many regards a lifetime worth of research and observation of people. I was a nerdy teenager, mental teacher teenager, reading Carl Jung's work and reading about his archetypal work, and studied archetypes with different people before the early phase of my business. I started to see patterns coming up in the women that I was working with, irrelevant of who they were, the businesses they were in, the life circumstances they were in. I was seeing these key patterns of behavior coming through. I was like, well, there's a framework in here, there's archetypes in here. And from there, it was probably about a 6-month period of documenting and researching and refining until I had what was way back then, this is 2010, was the very first iteration of what then became the Thrive Factor.
Yeah, incredible.
Yes, honing it ever since.
I know, it's amazing. It's amazing. And the fact that there's 12 of them and we've only gone through just three basic form, then it's just, I mean, if someone was to want to look at all 12 of them, you know, to get an idea whether they wanted to do the full profiling, is there a space that you've actually got the 12 like written out? Like just
yes. I mean, there's information. So a number of places online. If you go to thethrivefactor.com, that's a newer website that we've recently published for all things Thrive Factor, includes access to go down the path of certainly learning more. I'm going to be blogging more there in the future, and looking at, you know, anyone who does want to do profiling, you can connect a profile with me or one of the certified licensed profilers now that are in the world. More of them coming soon, because I've got new intake of Thrive Factor School happening in the next couple of months. Also to go to my podcast, Law of Effortlessness, which is available on all the regular listening platforms. You will be able to find individual episodes that I recorded for that podcast early part of 2019 as part of the book launch for the Thrive Factor book. And there is case studies, as I refer to them, but stories from women with individual archetypes in the book. And as many of them as I was able to, I recorded an episode for the podcast, and they're also on my Vimeo channel. So, yeah, so there, and, you know, finding out more about them, go to the Thrive Factor on Facebook, which is the Facebook page, or even, you know, those women who are interested in learning more and being involved in a conversation, is to come to Thrive Factor Circle Facebook group, where we talk about the archetypes in different ways. So there's many different ways to be part of the conversation before you even look at profiling or doing some other sort of work.
Yeah, brilliant. So you've sort of touched on this a little bit when you were talking about me and my archetypes, especially when you talk about the connector. But how do the archetypes help people really connect with, you know, because my work's really about connecting with yourself, others in the world around you, so that I suppose that you can thrive or become, you know, have success in all areas of your life, personally and professionally. So how do the Thrive archetypes really help people connect with themselves, others, including like friends or family or teammates or bosses?
So that self-awareness, so being able to understand yourself, and by that, as I said, the core parts of the framework is looking at each individual archetype's strengths and the potential challenges. That brings an incredible self-understanding, and often a self-acceptance. As I said before, women will be having conversations with them, or even in a group environment, and they'll be like, oh, now I understand why I do that. Or that makes sense why I feel that way. Or, okay, now I can see that that's not a problem like I thought it was, or I was told that it was. So that self-awareness is a huge thing. The awareness brings understanding, and with that they can make better choices about what they're doing with their life. So it's about choosing to use your strengths. With that comes confidence, comes clarity about what you actually want. It becomes the confidence shows up in different ways, and one of the key ways is in the ability to learn to say no to things that actually are not right for someone. So this is then going to improve relationships on all regards. But if you go down the path and learn more than your own 12 or your own archetypes, and you learn more about all 12, you will still, without even going down the path of becoming a certified profiler, you'll have enough base information to pick potential archetypes in other women in your life. So you will be able to better understand them. You'll be able to acknowledge them, you'll be able to help them to be in their space of using their strengths rather than succumbing to negatives from their potential challenges. So that brings a greater harmony. There's acceptance and understanding for yourself, but also for others. And that just brings together, for a network connector, much more harmonious relationships, but for the rest of us as well. Going, oh, now I get why she does that. So Lisa Lawbrick, who is the CEO and founder of the Ultimate Girls Week away, while we were just away on the retreat in Fiji, she was profiled by me a number of years ago, and there was a couple of incidents that just through observation where it came to me and she said, this has happened, like I'm just struggling to understand. And I was able to, even though I hadn't profiled the women involved, I was able to share some insight into potentially what may have gone on. And she's like, oh, okay, now I understand that, and can move on. And it wasn't a concern of hers. It was just that she trying to understand so she could work out, in some circumstances, women would come to me because they're trying to work out what to do about a situation. For Lisa, it just was trying to get an understanding for herself. So it's super powerful stuff. Simple but powerful.
And so, for example, if somebody, sort of the self-awareness piece comes in and they sort of understand through their profiling and your archetypes, I mean, keeping in mind that there's obviously lots of different systems as well, and personality archetypes, or just getting to know yourself. But in keeping in mind these archetypes and getting to know yourself, and you've then got an idea of, oh, that's why I'm like that, or possibly why I'm like that, and it helps you justify, the way that you walk in the world,
makes sense of who you are,
that you do, and you get it. So you get to that phase where you actually get it. But what are some of the things that you when you work with people, that you teach them to how to move? Because I think that a lot of people, what I find, and even with myself sometimes, what I find is that the knowing piece and the awareness piece is the core foundation. But moving from that awareness piece to the actioning and taking inspired action piece in a different way than you may be being conditioned to take, or that's out of your comfort zone, or, goes against what you thought maybe your beliefs or your conditioned beliefs were, how do you
Yeah.
go from that jump to that jump so that you can actually start living in a way that's in alignment with your real self?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a few different aspects to that, and it's not a simple response, but I'll give you a couple of examples, of course, because every individual archetype has its own way of existing in the world. So we've got to get to the core of understanding that archetype as an individual identity. And then you need to understand the archetype in relation to the other archetypes you have in your profile. So a profiling session I did recently, there was 5 archetypes for that beautiful young woman. She had the shapeshifter alchemist, the advocate rescuer, the mediator diplomat, the inspired believer, and the queen ruler. Okay. So the advocate rescuer and inspired believer is one that's going to jump in and do a lot for other people and really want to champion and support others. Now, if she didn't have the queen ruler, she could have potentially found herself in a space, and she works in the healing space, but so she could have found herself in a space where she was doing too much, saying yes too often, and potentially being taken advantage of. Put the queen ruler in, she's got a different level of a solid, strong boundary that stops her from maybe going down the path with someone without that archetype in that framework. Yeah, the queen ruler and the mediator diplomat are very grounded, very solid, very practical archetypes. So that also helps to ground her shapeshifter alchemist from getting a bit like, I'm not sure who I am and what I'm doing, and being all over the place. Yeah, so that's the dynamic. So you've got to learn the individual archetype, and then you've got to learn about the dynamic between your archetypes, because sometimes they're going to feel like the best group of girlfriends you've ever had, and other times they're going to squabble. There's going to be someone's going to feel left out. There's particular archetypes that like to have tantrums. So it's about learning about those things, about those archetypes, so that when those different feelings or experiences or responses come up within you, you can go, oh, that's okay. I'm all good now. I understand and I can move forward. I know what to do about this. Yeah. There's a couple of things that I would also all recommend at, introductory level to the archetypes. And I would always say to women, treat them like your group of best friends, and be aware that they're going to get on sometimes and sometimes they're not. So dialogue with them. This is a very therapeutic sort of thing to do, but have a conversation with your archetypes. Talk to them individually, talk to them as a group. And if you feel like something's not right or not working for you in your life, then literally stop and say, okay, who needs attention? Like who can help me with this, or who's feeling left out? And you'll get it. As you work with them more and more, you will get the answers coming back to you. Sounds a bit weird until you've done it, and then someone, oh God, yes, learning all these parts of myself. Yeah.
It's kind of a little bit like sometimes the inner child work, and like looking at, all
Yeah.
right, how old, what version of, say, Lisa has come up now, and then my adult self now has to have a conversation and internal dialogue with that inner self, with that little version of me.
Yeah, you can do it in an actual, literally a talking, a dialoguing process. You could do it in a journaling process. In the future, is one of the many things on my list to get done, is to actually create a little mini meditation for each archetype to connect in with her essence and her energy and strengths, so that you could listen to that if you feel like you're disconnected from a part of yourself for whatever reason, or say you are an inspired believer but you're feeling a bit flat and a bit lifeless and like you've lost all your mojo and you need to get that back, then you could in future maybe listen to that meditation, or you could record one for yourself about that and listen to it, so to remind yourself of what the strengths that you have and what you've got to do in the world. So so there's many different ways.
And another thing that's come up when you were just talking about that, when you were talking about the group of girlfriends and different people having different archetypes, and when you start to get to understand how different people's, what different people's profiling is that are close to you, and you go, oh yeah, I get that, because they're this, this and this, and that gives you a bit more understanding with them. Where's that line between sort of compassion and empathy to understanding a person and accepting that maybe still that might be them, like they, like when do people get that sort of freedom to behave in ways that maybe aren't so necessarily, let's say, acceptable, for a better word, but they're excused because that's their archetype. Oh, that's just them. That's just the way they operate in this world. That's their archetype. So where's that line between going,
that's an interesting thing to ask, Lisa. I've never been asked that before, but I often, as I said, like I have women that have worked with me, whether that's just for a profiling session or further, will come to me and ask me, for insights into this is going on and I don't know what to do about it. So it's giving them an opportunity to create there or find the right language to bring up a conversation with someone. So let me just think of an example of someone recently where I would have done this. Okay, so that advocate rescuer archetype, yeah, it's an archetype that says yes to everything, and an advocate rescuer can spread herself way too thin because she's volunteering here, she's doing this, she said yes to here, and, you know, not taking care of herself. She's not actually advocating for herself at all and getting clear on what she wants and needs and speaking up for that. She's too busy rescuing everybody else. Now, an advocate rescuer who's in that space and they've spread themselves too thin, they can often get to a point where they come across almost a bit desperate to help and a bit too over the top with things. And then if they feel like they've burnt themselves out, they can become like a martyr of like, well, I had to do it because no one else would show up. That can be really tough for some of the other archetypes to deal with when an advocate rescuer, mother nurturer can be a bit of a martyr too. When those archetypes go into that space, other archetypes particularly get triggered. And it can create a real disharmony in the dynamic, either within yourself if you've got those archetypes, or with another woman at work or a friend or whatever. And so I'm always of the I guess the opinion of a better way to say it, of you work on supporting someone to know their strengths rather than highlighting the shit that they've got going on and the crappy way that they might be expressing themselves. So if someone's being triggered or is unsure or doesn't like a particular thing about an advocate rescuer, for example, I would say to them, remind your friend that it's really great that they say yes to everybody all the time, but maybe it'd be really good if they'd spent some time doing something for themselves. And why don't you even organise, even though you're feeling like you want to strangle her, why don't you take her out for coffee and do something for her and encourage her to receive, because that's not what she does naturally. Yeah. So it's about putting ourselves out of our own, out of our comfort zone often to support others to be able to understand what they need and what's good to help them to thrive.
Yeah. Well, we're all in it together, aren't we?
There are. And it does take a real maturity and a real knowing of self to, rather than to respond in that often very emotive way that we will respond, is to be in a space of observation and acceptance. You don't have to say that. Acceptance doesn't mean that what someone's doing is okay. It just means that you understand more. And that you can remove yourself from the emotional part of your response. So also, if you have a hugely emotional response to someone, go to your own archetypes and go, okay, which one of you is having a problem here, and why might that be?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of it also comes down to your value system. And if you value, for you're valuing relationships, and good communication in relationships is a really important value for you, because relating to others is something that is really enhances your life. Then I suppose it's really important to make the effort and the time and put the energy into really understanding yourself and
100%.
other people, so that you can actually have those better relationships.
And if there are times where you get caught by the challenges and the negative part of it, and I still do this, I know my archetypes very, very well. I'm here committed to living them and leading by example, but there's still times where I'm like, oh, I can't believe I went there again. My libretto engineer needs freedom, and the engineer is the part of that archetype that can either create that freedom or over-engineer things in my life, my business, my life, whatever, to the point that I go from feeling great to feeling really trapped and stuck. So it's remembering that within that change of dynamic of the way I feel and the way I respond, that I've also got the tools and resources within the archetypes that I have to change that. It's about, I stop myself quicker. Red flag comes up and I go, okay, wait a second, what can I do here, and do it quicker and remind others.
Would you say that that's probably the the biggest change for you it sounds like you've always been pretty much a person that's been really intrigued by human behavior and yourself and behavior of others. So you probably, without even knowing all the different archetypes, you kind of did in a lot of ways. But do you feel that now, having the framework and having your own profiling yourself, that is that one of the biggest changes, your ability to pull yourself up and respond differently? Or would you say that there's...
Yeah, most definitely. I'm I'm not ignorant enough to believe that we all can bop around having a happy, wonderful life all the time. We all have different things that we experience where they can be really devastating. They can have a huge emotional and physical and spiritual toll on us. And I don't think, certainly in my experience, that we can prevent all of that from happening. But what I have found for myself and with the women that I've worked with the Thrive Factor and knowing their archetypes, is that when you have that greater understanding and acceptance of yourself, you can be kinder to yourself.
Mm.
You know, you can, when something not so good is happening and you maybe are having a big emotional, response to something, you can be gentler, kinder, more caring. You can do more self-care with yourself, so that the depth of the despair or the hopelessness or that the negative, the horrible feelings that may come about, it's not that that stops happening, but it doesn't happen often as in a deep, as dark a way as it could. Your resilience that you get that you're able to build, and the way that you cannot bounce back. I don't talk about bouncing back to going where you are. I think any experience like that, you can learn from that, because I'm a mental teacher, so everything's about learning. So it's about bounce forward. So whole other episode, but I've mapped out like the archetype of the archetypal and therapeutic process of the hero's journey. The archetypal journey about how we get to know ourselves and what happens, and we go to the depths of despair. We come back out the other side with new learning and wisdom. So it's a bounce forward experience. So there's that. You don't either stay in the darkness, if you want, for want of a better word, as long, or it doesn't go as deep as it could go, because you've got more self-awareness and confidence. And it's about remembering that. That's the key part of it. Remembering that you've got this experience and this knowing, and that you've been wherever you've been, you've probably had the same emotional state before, and you've got moved out of it in some regard. So you can do it again.
Because often when people do go into that state of real despair, they don't have the clarity for the remembering part. So that's a really good point, that remembering part. And that's when
remembering, resilience, all those things. And then, and surrounding yourself with the right community, small community, or for you, like as a network connector, a bigger community of the right women that can truly support you. I talk in my group a lot about on the weekend, the theme share is collective thriving. And when I talk about that, I really mean that this is about a space for us to support each other, to share stories that are motivating and inspiring, to be the cheerleader for others, and to talk about how when we work together, the world is a better place, as opposed to when we're in competition. Collaboration and collective.
I'm all about that.
I know you are. I know you are. More women are, thank goodness.
So, that brings me on, like when you were saying that about this idea that you've got the 8 permissions coming forward as your new program. And by knowing yourself and knowing your archetypes, it gives you that ability to be kind to yourself and all of that. And I mean, I suppose what comes with that is that permission to be kind to yourself. So could you talk just really briefly about what the permissions are?
So rather than go through the 8 permissions, I'll just share a couple of them, because I'm just conscious of time as well. And these are, I have a new program that's launching for women. It's like a group experience of learning and coaching and certainly learning about yourself and your archetypes. So the first part of the program is going through the whole 12 archetypes. So the beginning, you'll know what your archetypes are. You won't do a profiling debrief like you usually would, because you'll learn about all 12 archetypes as you go along in the first part of the program. There's mentoring with either myself or one of my graduate profilers as well. So you get some one-on-one time with someone to talk through and get your questions answered and understand more about the interpersonal dynamic and relationship of your archetypes. And then the second part of the program is exploring the 8 permission principles. So the word permission has been the biggest piece, or the most frequently used word in feedback I've received from women that I've profiled or worked with in the last, probably increasingly in the last couple of years. And it usually comes along the phrases like, I feel like I have permission to be me, or to do this, or to react this way, or to feel this way. And it's a real release and a relief. And as a liberator engineer, that to me is like liberation for people. So I looked at it and I went, okay, well, let's explore what permission is all about. What's why we need it, where we search for it, and why we give it to ourselves or don't give it to ourselves. And then I've come up with these 8 different principles. Now, one of them is self-understanding. So, self-responsibility. So that's one of the very early ones that we look at. And we look at, well, what does that actually mean for you? What does self-responsibility mean? And how can you take self-responsibility for your life, what you're doing? There's personal leadership woven in there and all sorts of different things. I'm not going to necessarily explaining it very well, but that's a big one. Celebration. So celebrate all of me is another one of the 8 permission principles. I'm a big believer in celebration, and it's not about wait till the big thing happens and then we go out and do something. It's the day-to-day little things. So how can we weave in a state of continual celebration and acknowledgement of who we are? There's gratitude woven in there and all sorts of different things. So that celebrate all of me is a really key part. So in that principle, we'll explore what celebration actually means, and you'll have the opportunity to reflect on that for yourself in relation to your archetypes and what they need. So like my liberator engineer needs freedom. So celebration for me is actually having time out. It's not going and doing more, because I can be very busy. My inspire believer needs to spend time with inspiring people or read a book or listen to a podcast. So that's a celebration for me, is actually carving out time in my schedule to do that. So we can relate it all back to our archetypes. So on the context of that, it's also the name of the program is Intentional Permission. So it's about how can we be more intentional with how we lead our lives, how we thrive.
Yeah, that's so good. And, it's such an amazing body of work. And I mean, I don't know, I haven't, I really only came across it mainly at the retreat in Fiji, and, really looked at the archetypes. I knew what you did. I just didn't know a lot of them in detail, but it's so fascinating. And I think people really love personality testing, human design, archetypes. It's fascinating. And even if people don't go ahead and really go on a deep level with it and make major changes, just for the curiosity and fascination of it all, it's a great starting place. I mean, it's
definitely,
as humans, we like to get clarity on things that may otherwise feel really abstract or unknown, and it brings it back and gives frameworks. Our mind works in frameworks. You only have to look at kids to realize that even a wild child operates better with routine. So it's like having some type of framework to actually help you kind of map your life out. But it doesn't have to be, I mean, when you say map your life out, when I say that, it feels a little bit constrictive because it seems like it's so structured, but actually sometimes structure brings more flow. So
it does. It gives you a way to, it's not about, as you said, it's not about giving you constriction in your life. It's giving you something to work with as a guidance. So I often talk about being like a guidance system, or a map is a way to help us to get from here to here. And there's often, not often, I would say in 99% of maps, there's more than one way to get from destination A to destination B. So it's a guidance system. It's a compass, if you like. All those words, metaphors are relevant. But it gives you a way to better understand yourself so that you can make the most of who you are in the world with whatever it is that your goals and dreams and desires are. It could be something like this. It could be something like this. It doesn't matter. They're all relevant because they're yours.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like I said right at the beginning, I think that's the key, isn't it? The key to life success, both personally and professionally, is self-knowledge. And once you come from a place of self-knowledge, then you can gain the self-worth and, really value what you're doing. And then you can make choices that actually work collectively with others and the world around us so that we can actually thrive.
100%.
Yeah. So, there is other things that I would have loved to talk about, but I'm really out of time. So I know it's such a big.
I'll come back, have a conversation with you again.
Yeah, I'd love to. So there's products and programs that you do, and we've briefly talked about them already in the fact that you've got your beautiful book that's come out with the Trifactor archetypes and your permission program. But is there anything else with more detail or links? Or
the best place, Lisa, for people to go is to the Trifactor website, which is thethrivefactor.com. You'll be able to find out more about the Trifactor in general, read some information from me about it. But really, you can, there's a button there that says discover your Thrive Factor, so you can click through to do profiling, but also to look for the programs button, and that's where you'll get things like the latest programs that I'm offering, like Intentional Permission and others in the future. And if anyone's listening in and they are a coach, a counselor, or, someone who already is in business and working with women, and you thought, I would love to be able to learn how to do this, you'll also find on that website, the thrivefactor.com, information about joining Thrive Factor School and being certified to be a profiler.
Yeah,
so lots of information.
Awesome. Brilliant. And I'll put all of that on the show notes as well, so that people don't have to remember it as they're listening. But just quickly, something that came across my mind a few times when you've spoken is that that your work is for women. Is there a reason that these archetypes are not suitable for men?
When I first created them, it was just very clear to me that it was a female framework, and I don't know why, because I've not in my business, my business consultancy, Business Creative Possibility, I don't exclusively work with women. I work with men and women, and I love working with both genders. But this has always been, from its very infancy, it's been clear to me that it was a female framework. And I have had a lot of feedback over the years, a couple of lots. The men that I've worked with have been like, oh, why can't we have something? And I have other ways that I can profile them and help them with different self-understanding. But increasingly for the women that I've profiled or worked with, and very much so when it came to launching Thrive Factor School and the training certification, the feedback has come back from women that they love that it's just for women. Mm-hmm. Because there's very few frameworks or profiling or personality type things out there that are just gender specific. Rather, they generally are for everybody, for every, no matter who you are and where you're from. So there's not any other reason than it was clear to me that it was only for women. I've tried to write out different times, not for a long time now, but in the early days, to write out, the boys version, the male version, and it just didn't come. So I'm just trusting that.
I'm sure that there'd be some of the archetypes would relate to a male.
Of course they do. Every one of them does. And I can, chat with, like I know, for example, that growing up, there's no question in my mind that my dad was a mentor teacher, because everything in our life was about what we could learn. Like all his language, like, okay, well, what's the lesson in that? Or what can we learn here? So, that's obvious to me, but it's just, I haven't actually mapped them, and I can't see that I ever will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who knows?
And I'm sure that if a man was to be listening now and he wanted to look at
he'd get value.
He'd definitely get value out of knowing, like, I'm sure even when you profile men who go, I resonate, and I'm that, and I'm that, and I'm not a female, but I'm still those things.
That's right. But the other gift that it offers to women, to men, is to better understand the women in their lives.
Yeah, that's the important bit, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Their partners, their daughters, their mothers, their sisters, their work colleagues.
Maybe this should be taken to schools so boys get to know it really early.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe someone will do that. I love it.
Yeah, awesome. Brilliant. So, I think we're kind of running out of time. So it's been so beautiful to have you and sharing, getting to chat with you again. It's exciting to chat to someone I just spent the week with. I'm really missing being back in the tropics. So it's kind of like a little bit of
back in Fiji vibe.
Back into but it's been amazing getting to really understand what you do a little bit more and share these insights with the people that are listening. So thank you for coming on and sharing your incredible insights today.
Yeah. We're very grateful that you we had a conversation and we're able to take it a little bit further and reconnect after our fabulous week not that long ago.
I absolutely adore your vision, and I think that what you bring to the world is definitely needed and has so much value. So that's awesome. So thank you everyone for listening to today's episode. Shannon and I would love to hear from you. So what's your biggest insight or takeaway from today's conversation? Just leave a comment and let us know. And if you'd like more information on Shannon, I will leave it in the show notes before, if you don't remember all the information she gave you before. But it's just thrivefactor.com.au, is that right?
Yeah, the thrivefactor.com, no AU.
So if you forget everything else, just remember that. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, please share it with your friends. Consider subscribing to the Wellthy Living podcast on iTunes or the Wellthy Living YouTube channel, where all the episodes will also live. So you can listen to more conversations with wonderful humans whose stories, knowledge, and actionable ideas and wisdom can help you live a meaningful, connected, and well life, both personally and professionally. I'm Lisa, an integrated life, clarity and wellbeing coach, a conversation facilitator, an event creator and host, and a wellbeing consultant. Workplace wellbeing consultant, sorry. So if you want to get in touch with me or find out a bit more about my services, you can just go to my website at wellthyliving.com.au. That's WELLTHY living.com.au, or connect with me on any of my social media channels. So until next time, remember, connection is medicine.